The word conspiracy derives from the Latin con, with, together, and spirare, to breathe. The world is abound with mystery. Occasionally, we get to glimpse behind the curtain. So let's take a breath together and do some research. Hi, my name's Alex Witney, and this is Conspiracy 101. Today, we're looking into Flat Earth. Now, this is an interesting one because I have something to say on this one in comparison to the other ones where I usually take an unbiased approach and try and look at things from both sides, mainly the conspiracy side. But this one is, I feel like I have a little bit more knowledge on. So, cards on the table. I used to be a geography teacher, so I have some understanding of the Earth. Geography, if anybody doesn't know, is the study of Earth and its processes, which basically just means everything to do with the Earth, whether that's to do with people or to do with, what's going on in terms of weather or volcanoes or rivers and things like that. So, an understanding of how the Earth works, I think, is necessary to understand where Flat Earth comes from, slightly. And that's mainly what I want to look at today, is what's the instigation? Why does Flat Earth exist? Why is that something that people vehemently believe in? As always, we'll have a look at top secret cover-ups. Nope. Not in there. If it's not in there, ooh. And usually, when starting with internet research, we go straight to Wikipedia. But alas, I guess not alas. No, that's a weird way of doing it. However, that's a better way of saying it. We won't be looking at Wikipedia today. To start off with, we will instead be looking at some news sources, because Flat Earth, as a concept, as an idea, gets way more publicity than lots of other conspiracies. I'm not going to say all other conspiracies, but it definitely gets a lot more than what you'd expect, considering that most people would just flat out refute it. I'll explain my position on it somewhere in the course of this episode, but I want to give a little backstory first. And news sources can sometimes be a good jumping off point when it comes to research, especially online research, because you'd expect, although it's not always the case, that they would have done some research when putting this together. So we've got one from BBC, and then we've got quite a long article from CNN, and then we're going to look at Wikipedia and see what they have to say, including a very interesting essay on Wikipedia, which is really odd for Wikipedia. So, this is from the BBC. It's actually a video. Why do people still think the Earth is flat? Flat Earth International Conference in Raleigh, North Carolina, attracted hundreds of attendees who believe the shape of the Earth is a disc instead of a sphere. This is from 2017, so 5 years now. He seems to be the face of Flat Earth at the moment, which is very interesting. That kind of goes into a little bit of... Why aren't you working? Oh. There we go. I messed up, I'm sorry. Goes in a little bit in... Available for purchase. And I think quite a lot of is that, and also a little bit of maybe people not doing that. And one thing I will say with this is that research is all good and well. Most topics we discuss on Conspiracy 101, all you can do is internet research. Either something that's happened in the past, or it is something that is not necessarily tangible. The Earth is something we live on and can be experienced. And I'll get to that when it comes to what I have to say on the matter. So let's get into it. Let's unmute him and see what he has to say.
How do I feel about this?
Wars,
Deception. Now it's just kind of funny to me.
To me, this is Satan's greatest lie.
destruction,
I got a dog, I would throw this thing in your chest. He'll come back with his mouth and it'll all be chewed up.
death,
I feel that I've been deceived.
We used to think when we got started individually in this that we were alone. We have one thing in common. We live on a flat plane.
When you're watching videos at home, it's just you and the screen. And it's lonely. I came here because I needed to see what flat earth people looked like. And I was not disappointed. They look normal. Very few people overweight. About 30% of them are cigarette smokers. And only 4 of them that I met are from around here.
Nobody likes this uncomfortable feeling of being this tiny ball flying through space, you know, this vast, endless universe. So as far as what's underneath this, I don't know, could be this thickness. It doesn't even have to be that thick because we can only drill down 8 miles. Heck, if this is only 50 miles thick, we don't know. So it could be this sort of dimension. But don't take my word for it. I could be a mental patient recently released from an institution.
Once I decided that I had to go with it being flat based on my gut feeling and common sense evidence, then I was looking around to see who was making a working model of the flat earth, and I couldn't find him anywhere. I guess I was the chosen one, or the calling, because I had the skills to do this. I just put some ice in here because the sun, as it goes around, pretty much keeps this area melted.
How do you know that the Earth is flat?
well, I've watched over 50 hours of video. So I went down to the seashore, down in New Jersey, and I did my own testing.
What sort of testing?
So you take a straight edge and you go from one end and you follow the horizon of the ocean and you go straight edge just to the other end, and it's flat.
Well, wasn't that interesting? I like to mute myself during the videos, but I had so much to say during that. Very interesting. A lot of interesting people. Really like this guy's vibe. He was just people watching, wasn't he? He wasn't there for Flat Earth. He just wanted to see what kind of people are there. This man, Mr. Sargent, seems to be the pioneer of the modern Renaissance when it comes to Flat Earth. And most of the YouTube videos, if you type in Flat Earth, his are the ones that will come up first. And I really did like I could be a mental patient. That's a good line. That's the line. I like that line. So, moving on. CNN. The Flat Earth conspiracy is spreading around the globe. I see what you did there, CNN. Does it hide a darker core? I'm not sure if this is a long video or not. Please continue a decade later. I don't really want to watch it. So, no, go away. Go. You can stay in the corner. Right. Let's have a read. I don't want to be a flat earther, David Weiss says, his voice wary as he reflects on his personal awakening. Would you wake up in the morning and want everyone to think you're an idiot? But Weiss is a flat earther. Ever since he tried and failed to find proof of the Earth's curve 4 years ago, he's believed with an evident passion that our planet is both flat and stationary, and has turned his world upside down. I absolutely freaked out Vice tells CNN in a phone interview. It literally whips the rug out from underneath you. Now, Vice finds it tedious to associate with the majority of people, though he unfortunately still has some friends who believe in a round Earth. I have no problem with anybody that wants to believe we live on a ball. That's their choice, he says. It's just not something I resonate with. Vice preferred community is those who share his life-altering belief, and that community is vast. That made me think of something. I'm just going to Google it and get it up, but I'm not going to show you yet. There we go. Perfect. Right. Where were we? CNN. Okay, let's bring you back. And that community is vast. And you see, that seems to play an important role, doesn't it? The fellowship of other flat earthers. This week, the businessman attended the 3rd annual Flat Earth International Conference held at an Embassy Suites hotel in suburban Dallas, Texas. Organisers told CNN that about 600 others went too. Previous conferences have taken place in Raleigh, that was the one we were on the BBC, and Denver. Denver. Would you have to go through Denver International Airport to get to Denver? That's foreshadowing. That's called foreshadowing. While Brazil, Britain and Italy have also held flat earth conventions in recent years. The event schedule resembled any corporate conference, with some fairly noticeable twists. Speakers gave presentations including Space is Fake and Testing the Moon, a global lie perspective. Awards for this year's best flat earth related videos were handed out, and believers revelled in an opportunity to meet several of the movement's most influential minds. A merchandise stall at last year's Flat Earth International Conference in Denver, Colorado. We've all been communicating online, but this brings us together so we can shake hands and give each other hugs. Oh, that's pre-2020, isn't it? Says Vice. We can collaborate, we can make new friends, because guess what? Our old friends, we lost a lot of friends. On a clear day, the curvature of the Earth can be seen from an airplane window, but remarkably, the hundreds of flat earthers at the Dallas gathering were just a small portion of the movement. People in every pocket of the spherical planet are rejecting science and spreading the word that the Earth is flat. There's no clear study indicating how many people have been convinced, and flat earthers like Vice will tell you without evidence that there are millions more in the closet anyway, including Hollywood A-listers and commercial airline pilots. But online communities have hundreds of thousands of followers, and YouTube is inundated with flat earth content creators whose productions reach millions. A YouGov survey of more than 8,000 American adults suggests that last year as many as 1 in 6 Americans are not entirely certain the world is round, while a 2019 Datafolha Institute survey of more than 2,000 Brazilian adults indicated that 7% of the people in that country reject the concept, according to local media. The Flat Earth community has its own celebrities, music, merchandise, and weighty catalogue of pseudo-scientific theories. It's been the subject of a Netflix documentary and has been endorsed by figures including the rapper B.O.B. Each year, more Flat Earth events fill the calendar, organisers say. I've never seen anything grow this fast, says Robbie Davidson, the founder of Dallas Conference. I would say that within 10 years, the numbers are going to be outstanding. Astounding. I can read. Next year, there's going to be a conference in every major country in the world, but experts are wondering if the movement is really harmless and whether we're even approaching the edge of its influence. Falling off the edge. When Davidson first heard that people really do believe in flat Earth, I just laughed and said, they've got to be the stupidest people ever. Who in their right mind could believe something so dumb? A couple of years later, Davidson was setting up the first International Flat Earth Conference. Like most of the speakers at the event CNN spoke to, he was convinced after he decided he couldn't prove the Earth's roundness. For Davidson, a born-again Christian, that may come up several times throughout today's episode. The most logical explanation for conspiracy of the millennium goes like this. Let's just say there's an adversary. There is a devil. There is a Satan. His whole job would be to try and convince the world that God doesn't exist. He's done an incredible job convincing people that with the idea that we're just on a random speck in an infinite universe. That's a digital illustration of the flat Earth. The reality, says Davidson, is that the flat Earth, sun, moon and stars are contained in a Truman Show-like dome. From there, pitfalls can easily be dismissed, like photos of the Earth from space, which flat earthers believe are photoshopped. This all goes away if they put a 24/7 camera feed on the moon, he adds. And Davidson quickly found a large online community believing the same thing. I thought doing a conference would just take it to the next stage, where the media and the world will look at it and say, wait a minute, something must be going on. This is not just some internet fad, or a bunch of crazy people online. They're now meeting in buildings. He has a few things he wants to make clear to a flat earth novice. Firstly, and most importantly, none of us believe that we're a flying pancake in space. The community merely believes that space does not exist. The world still sits still and the moon landing was faked. The jury is out on gravity, but as Davidson notes, no one has ever seen it. Nope. Secondly, no, you won't fall off the edge. While flat earthers' views on the world vary, most believe that the planet is a circular disk with Antarctica acting as an ice wall barrier around the edge. And thirdly, modern flat earthers have little in common with the Flat Earth Society, a group that has existed for decades and has more than 200,000 followers on Facebook. Samuel Shenton, founder of the International Flat Earth Research Society in 1967. Okay. That organisation, some speakers told CNN, is a government-controlled body designed to pump out misinformation and make flat Earth cause sound far-fetched to curious minds. Davidson calls their theories completely ridiculous. The Flat Earth Society told CNN, "We are not a government-controlled body. We're an organisation of flat Earth theorists that long predates most of the FEIC newcomers to the scene." There's rivalries within Flat Earth. I did not know this. It probably goes without saying that we find no joy in this sectarianism or the elevated emotions that surround some of our disagreements, the group added in response to criticism from the speakers at the conference. We wish the Flat Earth International Conference organisers all the best, but we remain steadfast in our own convictions. But flat earthers don't pretend to have all the answers. People don't really know 100% what the Earth is. We're just questioning what we're being told it is, Davidson explains. Several members of the community have carried out their own experiments, like bringing spirit levels onto airplanes that have supposedly proved their thesis. They haven't. To be absolutely clear, the Earth is not flat, as NASA explains in a fact sheet aimed at 5th to 8th graders. We'll be looking at that later. But most adherents say they're just curious. As all good scientific minds should be, we love science, Davidson insists. It's difficult to break out of that mindset. Still, most adherents demonstrate plenty of anti-scientific tendencies. It's hard to find a flat earther who doesn't believe most other conspiracies under the sun. A Flat Earth conference is invariably also a gathering of anti-vaxxers, 9/11 truthers, and Illuminati subscribers, to name a few. It's that hyper-skeptical mindset that helps flat earthers answer the big questions, like who's hiding the true shape of the planet from us? The ruling elite, from the royal family to the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all of those groups that run the world, they're in on it, says Vice. 2 women at a Flat Earth meetup in Orange County, California in 2017. But once you get into Flat Earth, the other conspiracy theories get knocked down into another tier, says Mark Sargent, a filmmaker and stalwart of the movement who was featured in the 2018 Netflix documentary Behind the Curve. Everybody here, they've got their top 20 conspiracies, and you could walk around door to door and those top 20 would differ from person to person, but everyone's number one is the always flat Earth, he tells CNN. And it helps that the group has a mutual target. Most of our ire is pointed towards NASA. That's our bread and butter, Sargent says, of the agency flat earthers believe is ultimately behind the conspiracy. But why and how could people believe a conspiracy theory so out of this universe? People, in essence, are just trying to understand the world, says Daniel Jolly, a senior lecturer in the psychology of conspiracy theories at the UK's Northumbria University. And they're looking at the world in a gaze where they're biased in their thinking. They may have distrust towards powerful people or groups, which could be the government or NASA, and when they look towards evidence that makes sense to them, this worldview is endorsed, he says. It's difficult to break out of that mindset. Scientists have also noted that the social motive draws people to conspiracy theories, the desire to maintain a positive view of the self and the groups we belong to. As social psychologist Karen Douglas of University of Kent says, and few groups have as strong a community as flat earthers. This conference is an outlet for a lot of people that might otherwise get ostracised by friends and family and co-workers when they come here. They know it's absolutely a safe space, Sargent says of the week's events. Timothy John at last year's conference, and his little plaque says, NASA and other military documents admit the Earth is flat, non-rotating. But perhaps the most important driver is an underlying need for power and control. I might Google him, actually. Know my location. Let's just... is it going to come up with his page? I kind of want to read what it says on his thing, but... okay. But perhaps the most important driver is an underlying need for power and control. People want to feel safe and secure in the world, Douglas says, and power comes from knowledge, no matter how questionable it may be. When you find out the Earth is flat, then you become empowered, Weiss says. The feeling helps believers to understand the world better, as they see it. You feel like you've got a better handle on life and the universe. It's now more manageable, adds Sargent. It's not going to harm anyone. Sargent could arguably be regarded as the godfather of the modern flat earth movement. If you got into flat earth, there's a really high chance you read into my stuff first, he tells CNN. But he had help. It was the advent of YouTube that gave him a platform to spread his own views, which he says the movement wouldn't exist without. Flat Earth was a binge watch on YouTube, he adds, aided by algorithms and personalised recommendations that turned flat Earth research into a never-ending rabbit hole. Earlier this year, YouTube started burying those videos and reducing recommendations of borderline content. But video makers like Sargent feel it no longer makes much difference. Anything on social media is always going to be helpful if it goes viral, right? Adds Davidson. Well, Flat Earth has gone viral. CNN has contacted YouTube for comment, but alleged rapid growth of a movement so enthusiastically rejected fundamental scientific beliefs does have some worried. It seems that increasingly people don't trust the scientists and experts or their motives, Douglas says. More research needs to be done in this area, and I'm sure there are some positive consequences to believing in conspiracy theories, but early indications suggest that they are more harm than help. This is a medieval engraving by a scientist leaving the world represented the change in conceptions of the world in the 16th century. I don't say this often, but look, there is a downside, admits Sargent, reflecting on the movement he helped encourage. There's a side effect to Flat Earth. Once you get into it, you automatically revisit any of your old skepticism. I don't think they're just linked, Sargent says, of Flat Earth and populists. They kind of feed off each other. It's a slippery slope when you think of the government has been hiding these things. All of a sudden you become one of those people that's like, can you trust anything on the mainstream media? For Davidson, the next step is to debate leading members of the scientific community, but they just laugh at us and say, you guys are dumb. But he's not deterred. It's touching everyone, it's not going away, and it's not going to slow down, Davidson says of the movement. The thing is out of the can. Very interesting. I hopefully from those two articles, or that video, that clip that was used in the news, and that article from CNN gives an idea as to how this movement this group of people who believe in one specific conspiracy, but obviously others outside of that, has gone quite mainstream. I can't really think of one that's so constantly in the news cycle, irrespective, is that a word? Of what is in the news itself. The main one I can think of is 9/11 conspiracies, because that obviously gets brought up a lot for various reasons. But yeah, this is constantly in the news. So let's take a little moment. Let's take a breath. Let's take a squeaky chair, which I'm trying to fix, but oh my god, it squeaks. And let's have a look. I'm not sponsored by them, so don't look. Let's have a look at the Wikipedia article about Flat Earth. And there are several articles about Flat Earth on Wikipedia, and it's really interesting that there are so many and the type. And we're going to go for a few. So, Flat Earth, this is the main one, just Flat Earth. Nothing about conspiracy, just Flat Earth. The Flat Earth model is an archaic and scientifically disproven conception of Earth shape as a plane or disk. Many ancient cultures subscribed to a flat Earth cosmography, including Greece until the Classical period, 323 BC, the Bronze Age and Iron Age civilizations of the Near East until the Hellenistic period of 31 BC, and China until the 17th century. See, that seems very late, doesn't it? The 17th century. And I think that's where most people believe the Flat Earth kind of got to, but it really didn't, especially in Europe. It wasn't a thing in the Middle Ages or up until the 17th century, 1600s. The idea of a spherical Earth appeared in ancient Greek philosophy with Pythagoras, although most pre-Socrates retained the flat Earth model. The idea of a spherical Earth, so a globe, appeared in ancient Greek philosophy with Pythagoras, so 6th century BC, but flat Earth still was around. In the early 4th century, Plato wrote about a spherical Earth, and by 330 BC, his former student, Aristotle, had provided strong empirical evidence for this. Knowledge of the Earth's globe shape then gradually began to spread beyond the Hellenistic world. Hellenistic just means Greek. And Aristotle, I think it was Aristotle, was able to measure, I think it was him, it might have been someone else, was able to measure the Earth's diameter, basically, using the curvature of the Earth, which we'll get to, and was pretty much accurate considering he was using like bits of twine and nothing fancy like we've got now, like lasers, which can measure things quite accurately. Despite the scientific fact and obvious effects of the Earth's sphericity. Okay, so that's an interesting one. No, that was a different one. Okay, I haven't got that one, so I'm going to open that one as well, and we'll go for it. Pseudoscientific flat Earth conspiracy theories, here we go, hey, are espoused by modern flat Earth societies. I think that's what yes, we've got that, okay. And increasingly by unaffiliated individuals using social media. So this is a flat Earth map by Orlando Ferguson in 1893. The map contains several references to biblical passages, as well as various jabs at the globe theory. Now, as you've probably cottoned on by now, and that's like a donut shape, isn't it? That would... I can see where you'd get the it's a disc, but it's slightly, you know, like an eyeball, isn't it? It's convex. Convex? Is it convex or concave? Convex, yeah, I was right. So yeah, I can understand why you'd think it might be a convex disc. But if it was a concave disk, like Southern Africa is here, South America and Australia, then that would be weird. Like looking along horizon, especially Australia, which is really flat, majority desert, really flat. Southern Africa would be difficult. South America would be difficult because of so much vegetation, but Australia would be obvious. And this is 1893. There were Australians in 1893. So, scripture that condemns the globe theory. If you've been paying attention to some of the words that I've been saying, then you might have cottoned on that most flat earthers are in some way influenced, either directly or indirectly by other people, by Christianity. At least by the American evangelical Christianity. As far as I know, the Vatican has quite happily accepted that there is a globe, a spherical Earth. But various people use the Bible because they might be biblical literalists. They might take the Bible literally and use it as evidence. Usually taken out of context, but not always. So let's see what the 1800s had to say. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. It's from Exodus. And the sun stood still and the moon stayed. Even if you're taking those literally, they could be. The world also shall be stable, that it be not moved. Okay. To him that stretched out the earth and made great lights, not worlds. That's a psalm, so... The sun shall be darkened in his going forth. The four corners of the earth. That's a well-used expression nowadays, isn't it? But maybe Isaiah meant that. The whole earth is at rest. The prophecy concerning the globe theory. Isaiah 29th chapter, the prophecy concerning the globe theory. That's very on the nose. I guess that's not actually like... Woe to be the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me. And there's a lot of Isaiah in this. So the sun returned 10 degrees. It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth. What is a 2D sphere? But a circle. He that spread forth the earth, that spreadeth abroad the earth by himself. My hand also hath laid the foundation of the earth. Thus saith the Lord, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the moon and the stars for a light by night, not worlds. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood. I feel like most of those are the classical, I need to take Viagra to be a proper man again, David Icke quote, because they all seem to be completely taken out of context, which is very interesting. Where are we? Oh, I closed it by accident. Okay. Oh, no, I can't go. No, I can't. There we go. We're back. Okay, so I'm going to be concentrating mainly on European beliefs and then Western ideas. Obviously, the idea of Earth and how it was formed has innumerable explanations, and every culture on Earth has a different varying take, whether it be literally That's what they literally believe, or allegorically, in it's a way of explaining the Earth, but adding in thoughts for future people. So, belief in flat Earth, we've got Western Asia, Egyptian mythology, and early Egyptian and Mesopotamian thought. The world was portrayed as a disc floating in the ocean. So that was a long-standing early classical thought, was that the ocean surrounded the landmass, and that was obviously put to the test. And you can see the evolution of maps, which is something I'm quite interested in. But you can see the evolution of maps, and with the introduction of places like North America, South America, and Antarctica, or what we think is Antarctica, what they portrayed on the map. And that's another conspiracy in and of itself. Were these places found before they were found? Obviously, there had the indigenous people living on them, the native populations, but before they were found by Europe, were they found by other people and other map makers? Because a lot of places seem to be well detailed or discovered before they were actually discovered. So Antarctica is a really good example. It was found by the Russians in the mid-19th century, but it appears on maps much earlier, and there's obviously a lot of talk about the landmass down there. One thing I did want to say about this man here, I love how he just said, it was just like, yeah, well, this part, I just put ice there. I just put it there. Okay? Any explanation as to why? Because there are no land masses there. No permanent land masses on the North Pole. It is ice, sea ice, for the most part. And that has to do with the scientific explanation for this, has to do basically with it's pointing away from the sun half of the year. If you take a spherical Earth to be gospel, the seasons are an indicator as to which part of the hemisphere, the top or the bottom of the globe, are pointing towards the sun, because the Earth isn't like that. It doesn't spin round. I don't have anything that's ball-shaped. It doesn't spin round like that. It's kind of on an axis and spins around like that. There are also lots of different variations in that axis. So it doesn't just go on its side. It also sort of, as it's spinning, it kind of wobbles, and the orbit around the sun also changes sometimes. And obviously the sun's moving along with, the whole solar system is moving around the spiral arm of the Milky Way. I think that's how you explain it. Again, I'm not a space person, just Earth. I like the Earth. But and it just brought back a memory. Anyway, where were we? So, the idea that surrounded by oceans, long-standing, and that was a lot to do with the fact that we just didn't explore much. Europe was an excellent place to live for a long period of time. Obviously, the what is now Iraq, Iran, was amazing to live, and North Africa. But again, that's very close to Europe. And then Asia obviously had its own cultures and civilizations that grew up at a similar time, but were eventually linked. But again, that's just one giant landmass. Eurasia, as it's sometimes called, you can include Africa in that as well, could be classed, if you wanted it to, as one continent instead of three. And you don't really need much more. But the Spanish, Portuguese, French and English, British, got bored, didn't they, and started going over the oceans. So, Greece. Poets. Both Homer and Hesiod describe a disc cosmography in the Shield of Achilles. Again, a lot of this is poetry, and you could be... It's hard to get into the mindset of a Homer several thousand years ago. Pre-Socratic philosophers believed the world was flat, according to several sources. Thales thought the Earth floated in water like a log. That's very interesting. However, it has been argued that Thales actually believed it around Earth. Yes, that's the problem, isn't it? Just because someone writes something doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they believed. Anaximenes of Miletus believed that the earth is flat and rides on air, in the same way that the sun and the moon and the other heavenly bodies, which are all fiery, ride the air because of their flatness. Okay, this is a possible rendering of Anaximander's world map. So as you can see, wow, Libya's really grown. But Europe and Mediterranean, so you've got Italy as the boot, and then you've got Greece. So you've got Italy and Greece, and that's all you need. Britain doesn't really exist. You got Europe. Then you got the Black Sea, which is going off into Russia, but Russia doesn't really exist. Asia's just, you know, not really a thing. Nile River, and then you got Libya, which is massive, apparently. I'm guessing they just mean Africa when they say Libya. So, Northern Europe. The ancient Norse and Germanic peoples believed in a flat earth cosmography and the earth surrounded by an ocean with the axis mundi, a world tree, or pillar in the centre. The world encircling ocean sat a snake called Jormungandr. The Norse creation account preserved in Giflanginen states that during the creation of the earth, an impassable sea was placed around it. But you could interpret that as space being the impassable sea, which is something that, again, Christians we will get into, hopefully at some point. Okay, I'm going to briefly touch on this and just talk about it, but in ancient China, the prevailing belief that the earth was flat and square, while the heavens were round, an assumption virtually unquestioned until the introduction of European astronomy in the 17th century. The English sinologist Cullen emphasises the point that there was no concept of a round earth in ancient Chinese astronomy. So that is very interesting, in that they didn't really think about it or didn't need to question it because it didn't matter. When it did matter was when you were doing long voyages across oceans. And again, that would be something we discuss. So, spherical earth in Greece, Pythagoras in the 6th century and Parmenides in the 5th century stated that the earth is spherical, and this view spread rapidly in the Greek world. Around 330 BC, Aristotle made on the basis of physical theory and observation evidence the earth was spherical and reported an estimate of its circumference. So he guessed the circumference based on by the 2nd century AD, Ptolemy had derived his maps from a globe and developed a system of latitude and longitude, which were really important in terms of sea navigation. And climes. What do they mean by climes? Biomes. Okay, yeah. That's really interesting. So yeah, that's an old version of biomes, basically. But I guess that's where we get the word climate from. That varying different latitudes and longitudes would equal different areas. You know, it makes sense. But I'm not going to get into that. Pliny the Elder was in a position to claim that everybody agreed of its spherical earth shape, though disputes continued regarding the nature of antipodes and how it was possible to keep the ocean in a curved shape. See, that is one of those weird ones, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So an antipode is basically where if you were to drill a hole down from where you're standing right now, where would you come out? If you could drill it perfectly straight through the earth. And I think there are only like 1 or 2 actual proper antinodes. Antipodes, antipodes, I don't know how you pronounce it. And also, how is it possible to keep the ocean in a curved shape? So they're obviously questioning that. Once gravity was theorized and made sense of, then it became a lot easier to explain. Early Christian church. This is where it really becomes more of a thing again. During the early period of the Christian church, the spherical view continued to be widely held, with some notable exceptions. Early church was mainly Jewish. Christian church was mainly Jewish and obviously Greek. It was the Roman Empire, which was founded on much of Greece in that Judean area, the Palestinian area. So, the kind of books the well-learned people would have been Greek learned rather than, say, Asian learned. And Athenagoras, an Eastern Christian writing around the year 175 CE, so CE is Common Era, it just means AD, said that the Earth was spherical. Methodosius, an Eastern Christian writing against the theory of Chaldeans and the Egyptians, said, "Let us first lay bare the theory of the Chaldeans and the Egyptians. They say that the circumference of the universe is likened to the turnings of a well-rounded globe, the Earth being a central point. They say that since its outline is spherical, the Earth should be the centre of the universe around which the heaven is whirling." That's an interesting quote. Ridiculed the notion of antipodes and the philosophers who fancied the universe is round like a ball. They also thought that heaven revolves in accordance with the motion of the heavenly bodies. So that's a very old Greek and Roman idea in terms of the movement of the earth and the heavens above, and the idea of the Greek and Roman gods being an influence on the heavenly bodies and things not happening because they're not doing stuff. We haven't done any canvas stuff, and I think we need to. So let's have a look. Flat Earth. Right, so we got a globe. What is a globe in a 2D plane? It is a circle. So there we go. There's our flat Earth. Oh, look at that. It's a globe. We're gonna hate it. So we got flat Earth versus a globe. So I like that. Either side. Oops. Oh no, it's terrible positioning by me. I need to look on the thing. There we go. There are some of these bad boys, but I ain't paying for nothing, Canva. You leave me alone, boy. There are some really nice pictures. Oh, there's a see-through one there. It's interesting. Trying to think what have we discovered so far? Not a lot, really. We've been kind of skirting around the topic, so let's just leave it like that. But let's put a Bible in there, because that does seem to keep coming back. So let's put the Bible underneath the flat Earth. Okay. So where are we? Early Christian church still. Okay. Okay, yep. Lots of people. Some historians do not view Augustine's scriptural commentaries as endorsing any particular cosmological model, so let's ignore that then. Early Middle Ages. This is when it becomes a little bit more. We need to start thinking about, what's going on. Early medieval Christian writers in the early Middle Ages felt little urge to assume flatness of the earth, though they had fuzzy impressions of the writings of Ptolemy and Aristotle relying more on Pliny. With the end of the Western Roman Empire, Western Europe entered the Middle Ages with great difficulties that affected continent's intellectual production. Most scientific treatises of classical antiquity in Greek were unavailable, leaving only simplified summaries and compilations. In contrast, the Eastern Roman Empire did not fall, and it preserved the learning. So you're looking at Constantinople, that area, Byzantine. Still, many textbooks of the early Middle Ages supported the sphericity of the Earth in the western part of Europe. Okay. Come on. Resembles a wheel. Bishop Isidore of Seville taught in a widely read encyclopedia of the etymologies diverse views such as the Earth resembles a wheel, resembling Anaximander's in language and the map that he provided. Very interesting. Some have concluded that he thought the Arctic and Antarctic zones were adjacent to each other. He did not admit the possibility of antipodes, when he took to mean people dwelling on the opposite side of the Earth, considering them legendary, and noting that there is no evidence for their existence. Isidore's T and O map, which is just there above my head, which is seen as representing a small part of spherical Earth, continued to be used by authors through the Middle Ages. The 9th century bishop Merus, who compared the habitable part of the northern hemisphere, Aristotle's northern temperate climb, with a wheel. Interesting. Again, more estimates of the Earth. On the Sphere World, the most influential astronomy textbook. Then you've got the Islamic scholars. they were very good at astronomy. So yeah. It doesn't seem, the Quran mentions the Earth was spread out, so it doesn't necessarily lend itself to being flat or spherical. Beginning of the 19th century, a historical myth arose around which held the predominant cosmological doctrine during the Middle Ages was the Earth was flat. An early proponent of this myth was American writer Washington Irvine, who maintained that Christopher Columbus had overcome the opposition of churchmen to gain sponsorship for his voyage of exploration. Later, significant advocates of this view were John William Draper and Andrew Dixon White, who used it as a major element of their advocacy of the thesis, and that there was a long-lasting and essential conflict between science and religion. Some studies of the historical connections between science and religion have demonstrated that the theories of their mutual antagonism ignore examples of their mutual support. Subsequent studies of medieval science have shown that most scholars in the Middle Ages, including those read by Christopher Columbus, maintained that the Earth was spherical. And again, we've been through the fact that if you were a navigator in those times, you would have relied a lot on... If you weren't using the stars for navigation, you would have been using calculations that included the curvature of the Earth. Put it like that. Modern flat Earth beliefs. In the modern era, the pseudo-scientific belief in a flat Earth originated with English writer Samuel Rowbotham, with the 1849 pamphlet Zetetic Astronomy. Lady Elizabeth Blount established the Universal Zetetic Society in 1893, which published journals. Other notable flat earthers in the 19th and early 20th century include a bunch of people. Then the International Flat Earth Research Society was set up in 1957, better known as the Flat Earth Society from Dover, England, as direct descendant of the Universal Zetetic Society. And in the internet era, it's obviously become a thing, which we will discuss. Okie dokie. Whew, that was a lot, but we've gone through the history of Flat Earth, and basically, we've come to an understanding that medieval people were quite confident, although there was maybe a little bit of, it comes with both of them. I don't want both of them. Can I crop you? I just want one. Were relatively comfortable with their notion that that the Earth was round. So even by that point, they were quite happy. And that doesn't necessarily mean... I know I put the Bible on that side, but I feel like the majority of people within the church also believe that. So we'll see. Okay, so what is next? Okay, so seeing as we're talking about medieval people and the modern interpretation of the Middle Ages was that they all believed that flat Earth existed. The myth of the flat Earth, or flat Earth era, is a modern historical misconception that European scholars and educated people during the Middle Ages believed the Earth to be flat. The earliest clear documentation of this idea of a spherical Earth comes from ancient Greeks, which we've already discovered. This knowledge spread with Greek influence during the early Middle Ages, and most European and Middle Eastern scholars espoused Earth's sphericity. And belief in flat Earth among educated Europeans was almost non-existent in the late Middle Ages onward, though fanciful depictions appear in art, such as exterior panels of the triptych The Garden of Earthly Delights. But you could say, I don't see how that denotes it being flat. But yes. According to Stephen J. Gold, there was never a period of flat Earth darkness among scholars, regardless of how the public at large may have conceptualized our planet both then and now. Greek knowledge of sphericity never faded, and all major medieval scholars accepted the Earth's roundness as an established fact of cosmology. So, it became easier to accept the antipodes, other people living on the other side of the Earth, when navigation to those places became a thing. But even during the era when travel around the world didn't exist, they still, majority of people, according to modern studies, were happy. This is obviously one of those things that just happens every now and then, where we get an idea about the past through misrepresentations of either individuals who are writing about it or media. Sometimes it's media, isn't it? And yeah. So, before we get onto modern flat Earth beliefs, we've been going for an hour already. Wow, that's gone quick. Before we get onto modern flat Earth beliefs, I'm going to go to our sponsor today. I would like to thank Global Foods Limited, a name you can trust, for sponsoring us today. They are a... didn't write anything down. They are a food company who offer catering and have been a business within Wales for the past... for the past 50 years. Thanks, Global Foods. Appreciate the support. So, before we get into modern flat Earth beliefs, let's go back. Let's have a tall tale. Let's go back to the earthy days of my childhood. I grew up on... It didn't look like that, but whatever. On a boat. My dad was a sailor in every sense of the word, and from very early on, like a newborn, up until I was a teenager, I've been on and off boats and used. I wouldn't say I was a sailor. I wouldn't say I was. I have no formal education. Don't have yacht masters or anything like that. But I understand how boats work, how yachts work, and how navigation works in a very simple sense. Obviously, my then movement on to geography as a discipline, it was influenced heavily by growing up on a boat. But growing up on a boat, you use a lot of instruments, compasses, navigational instruments, GPS, in order to get around, in order to make it easier. But you can also just use your eyes. That sounds really stupid, but say if you're heading on a course and you want to stay, I don't know, 270 or whatever on the compass, sometimes that's fine. Other times you have a marker in front of you that you want to use, whether it be an island. I grew up around Greece, for the most part in the Mediterranean, which has lots and lots of islands, and you can use them for navigation, along with maps and various stuff. If you spend time out at sea, you notice and can see the curvature of the Earth. You can see things going up and down beyond the horizon, which would be very difficult to understand as a flat plane. I feel, even as a child, without being... you see, it's hard, isn't it? I think a child's understanding would understand that the Earth is a ball rather than a flat object if they grew up at sea. Because the curvature of the Earth, it's possible to see from an airplane, but it's also possible to see from a boat, even like down at horizon level. So that is my backstory. That is the main point of... Oh, isn't that pretty? That I was getting to. And the reason why I don't believe the Earth is flat. Most of these Conspiracy 101s, I will not say whether I believe it or not. I might talk about whether I believe certain parts of the story or not, with various things, but I won't say whether or not I believe them. This one, I don't believe because of my experiential circumstances, what I have experienced in life, what I have read about, what I have known to be true from not just reading other people's work, but also experiencing life for myself, which is, again, like I said at the top of the show, very hard to do for most conspiracies. We weren't there when JFK got shot. I wasn't alive when the moon landings happened. It can be very hard to put yourself in those situations to try and understand conspiracy theories. This one, however, I feel like I can say no. Now, maybe at some point I might go up into space, look down at a spherical world, a disc, a flat Earth, and be like, oh, no, let's change my mind. But in terms of what I understand the world to be, it is spherical. But like all conspiracy theories, even if you don't believe them, they are very interesting as to why they exist. And I think this one is more so. We've gone through the history of it. Even with the notions that some people have in their head that middle-aged people, middle-aged? People from the Middle Ages. It's all those middle-aged, it's all those millennials, isn't it? Even though we've gone through all that, spherical world, spherical globe, a global world, global foods existed and was known about even before the advent of seafaring as we know it, you know, in modern times, being able to go from continent to continent. Obviously, seafaring existed, otherwise you wouldn't have the populated islands in the Pacific. But alas, however, modern flat Earth beliefs. Let's get into it. Modern flat Earth beliefs are promoted by organisations and individuals which make claims that the Earth is flat while denying the Earth's sphericity, contrary to over 2 millennia of scientific consensus. What is that? What is that citing? US Department of Commerce. Is the Earth round? I think we need to look at that one. Flat Earth beliefs are pseudoscience. The theories and assertions are not based on scientific knowledge. Flat Earth advocates are classified by experts in philosophy and physics as science deniers. Flat Earth groups of the modern era date from the middle of the 20th century. Some adherents are serious and some are not. Citation needed. Those who are serious are often motivated by religion or conspiracy theories. So that does seem to play a part as well, wasn't it? It was the anti-NASA sentiment. So it was either a religion aspect in terms of Bible literalism. There we go, I got it. Or it seems to be the anti-NASA idea, and moon landing is a fake and all that. Through use of social media, flat Earth theories have been increasingly espoused and promoted by individuals unaffiliated with larger groups. Many believers make use of social media to spread their views. That's just a modern phenomenon, isn't it? So projections of a sphere like this have been co-opted as images of flat Earth model, Antarctica as an ice wall surrounded by a disc-shaped Earth. So, one of the problems with our world being a globe is that it's very hard to map accurately on a 2D plane. And the reason for that is because the Earth isn't a perfect ball. And we've known this for a long time. The Earth is actually like a spheroid, kind of an ugly shape. It's not pretty. It's a weird shape with sort of bulges and yeah, it's not a perfect sphere. So when we do map the world out, we tend to use, it's a fly in here, did I get it? No. We tend to use different projections. The one we're used to is the Mercator projection. Maybe? I don't know. I cannot remember. But you can also do projections like this in order to... Scale tends to be a problem when it comes to these. You might get accuracy in terms of drawing lines on the map, which would be lines relative if you're drawing them on a globe. But countries can appear bigger than they actually are because you've had to stretch them in order to get their boundaries to line up with where actually they're pointing. Because a globe doesn't, squash down onto a 2D surface easily. My go-to with all that kind of stuff is Greenland here is not very big and fits into Brazil 5 times. So if we just have a... Did I pause that or not? I did, good. Let's just have a quick look at a world map. So your traditional world map. That's probably an overestimation one, but you can see the different various projections that are used because all the countries and continents all look a bit different. Africa usually gets squished, and Greenland gets exaggerated. And Greenland can fit into Brazil 5 times. Sometimes you get ones where Africa is a little bit elongated. Again, squished. And it's all just trying to get things lined up perfectly, which is very difficult to do because the Earth is a globe. It would be a lot easier to do if the Earth wasn't a globe, and we might get a more accurate 2D representation. 22 images of the Earth taken from space, and you can see it moving around quite nicely. With Africa looking huge, because it is. People don't realise that. So, Rowbotham's Flat Earth map. That's a weird looking... What are these? What's L? So... So you've got North and South America, you've got Africa here and Eurasia here. And then you got... That looks like Papua New Guinea and those kind of islands. And then what's here? What's that? Okay. Bible literalism. There we go, it's come up. Modern flat earth belief originated with science with the English writer Samuel Rowbotham, based on the conclusions derived from the 1838 Bedford Level experiment. Rowbotham published a pamphlet called Zetetic Astronomy. Bedford Level experiment is a series of observations carried out along a 6-mile length of Old Bedford River on the Bedford Level of Cambridgeshire Fens. Oh no! That is literally where I'm from. During the 19th and early 20th century, to measure curvature of the Earth, Samuel Burley Rowbotham concluded the first observation started in 1839 claimed that it helped prove the Earth to be flat. However, in 1870, after adjusting Rowbotham's method to avoid the effects of atmospheric refraction, Russell Wallace found the curvature consistent with a spherical Earth. Okay. So he did the measurements wrong. Oh, interesting. So sunset and sunrise shift in perceived position of the sun due to atmospheric refraction. Interesting. That's kind of like when you have, I don't know, like a pen in some water or whatever and it looks weird. That's basically what they're getting at. Cool. I messed up. Give me a second. There we go. And we're back. So, he seems to have started all this. Rowbotham. I don't think if I type his name in, no, it's not going to come up. What if I type in Samuel? That looks like a Rowbotham. Look at that bad boy. Let's get him on the flat Earth. He can be there. He can be the flat Earth man. So we remember. But it was one guy who brought this to the attention of the masses. Okay. He published a leaflet entitled The Inconsistency of Modern Astronomy and Its Opposition to the Scriptures, which argued that the Bible, alongside our senses, supported the idea that the earth was flat and immovable, and this essential truth should not be set aside for a system based solely on human conjecture. Very interesting. Ooh. Well-known members included Bullinger of the Trinitarian Bible Society. Notable flat earthers. 956, Samuel Shenton. Another Samuel. Oh. How very interesting. How very, very interesting. And put another Samuel there. It's a different Samuel, but put another Samuel. How very interesting. Convenient, huh? Okay, so you got those. Eugene Scott called the group an example of extreme biblical literalist theology. The earth is flat because the Bible says it's flat, regardless of what science tells us. Decline and relaunch. Planet model is humanity lives on a disk with the North Pole at its centre and a 150-foot high wall of ice in Antarctica at the outer edge. The resulting map resembles the symbol of the United Nations, which Johnson used as evidence for his position. Flat Earth Society recruited members by speaking against the US government and all its agencies, particularly NASA. Interesting. We've got Canada, we've got some Italy. We got the skeptics and believers. Mike Hughes, a daredevil and flat earth conspiracy theorist, used a home-built crude rocket in an attempt to see for himself if the earth is flat in 2018. His rocket, made of scrap metal, was estimated to cost $20,000 and used mobile home as a custom launch pad, managed to climb up 572 meters. With Hughes inside and ended up with a hard landing, but with parachutes. Oh, God. We were not seriously injured, remained firm in his flat earth beliefs. I'm pretty sure if you wanted to, you could put a camera on some balloons and just send it up, and it would get to enough of, it wouldn't get into space proper, but it would get close enough to be able to see, you know, a lot. Standing human adult. So these are all the graphs of distance of a true horizon of the Earth for a given height. So basically, what the horizon looks like. Talking about the Bedford level experiment, which we've just talked about. And the moon tidally locked to the Earth left and how it would be without tidal lock right. Yes. So I guess another reason, tides. I'm sure there's an explanation for flat Earth in there somewhere. There's a lot. Okay. Wow. Oh, wow. They've really tried. They've really... Since the 1500s, many people have sailed or flown completely around the Earth in all directions, and none have discovered an edge or an impenetrable barrier. There you go, history of Antarctica, what we talked about. Some flat Earth conjectures propose the Earth is a North Pole-centered disk, conceive of Antarctica as an impenetrable ice wall that encircles the planet and hides any edges. The disk model explains east-west circumnavigation and simply moving around the disk in a circle. It is possible in this model to traverse the North Pole, but it would not be possible to perform a circumnavigation that includes the South Pole, which it posits does not exist. So, right, so they think that if you go across the South Pole, you wouldn't be able to go across the South Pole, basically, because it's not really there, is it? It's a wall. That's definitely happened, or at least as far as I know. The first land crossing of the entire of the Antarctica was the Commonwealth Trans-Antarctic Expedition in 1955-58. Many exploratory airplanes have since passed over the continent in various directions. Okie dokie. Grid distortion of the spherical surface. There's so much. It's not just the ones that you could think of off the top of your head. There's so many specific ones in terms of, like, you know, engineering and other different types of... Yes, this is definitely one of those theories that you don't necessarily go, oh, yeah, I can see that. It's more of a, why do you think that? Have you thought about literally everything? Because it's very hard to. There's a lot of stuff. Right, let me just have a quick look about... Okay, so we've got that weird one, we've got Denialism, got a nice little National Ocean Service. Let's go for this one. And it's something we've already talked about, which is cool. So, is the Earth round? So this is from the National Ocean Service. The Earth is an irregular-shaped ellipsoid. It's not really it's not a round ball. We've talked about this already. It's a god-awful shape. It looks like a flat... Growing up, as a kid in the UK, in England, you play a lot of football, aka soccer. And footballs, once they've been played enough, look like that eventually. They don't pop like a basketball. They kind of just sort of deflate and become gross. And they're sometimes more fun to play with because they do weird things and you can kick them a lot easier, a lot softer. But yeah. That is the geoid undulation, false colour, shaded relief with vertical exaggeration. So it's exaggerating it, but you get the idea. It's not a perfect round circle. It's kind of bumpy and gross. So this NASA image, there you go. Immediately, skeptical people are going to go, no, that's fake. Shows Earth from space. The image is a combination of data from 2 satellites of a moderate resolution image spectroradiomoidus instrument aboard NASA's Terra satellite collected the land surface data over 16 days. Very nice. While the Earth appears to be round when viewed from a vantage point of space, it's actually closer to an ellipsoid. However, even an ellipsoid does not adequately describe the Earth's unique and ever-changing shape. Our planet is pudgier at the equator than it is at the poles by about 70,000 feet. This is due to the centrifugal forces created by the Earth's constant rotation. Mountains rise almost 30,000 feet and the ocean trenches diving over 36,000 feet compared to sea level further distort the shape of the Earth. Sea level itself is even irregularly shaped. Slight variations in the Earth's gravity field cause permanent hills and valleys in ocean surface of over 300 feet relative to an ellipsoid. Additionally, the shape of the Earth is always changing. Sometimes this change is periodic, as in the case with daily tides that affect both ocean and the crust. Sometimes the change is slow and steady, as with the drift of tectonic plates or the rebound of the crust after a heavy sheet of ice has melted. And sometimes the shape of the planet changes in violent, episodic ways during such events as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, or meteor strikes. The National Geodetic Survey measures and monitors our ever-changing planet. Geodesy is the science of measuring and monitoring the size and shape of the Earth, including its gravity field, and determining the location of points on the Earth's surface, because that's obviously really important if you're trying to fly a plane or navigate somewhere. Or just figure out, where places are so you can put them on the map accurately, and you're using GPSs. If the Earth is moving around and changing lots, you can have those little points of where cities are, where villages are, where important places are in the world are going to move around, aren't they? So, let's go to the NASA one. What is Earth? This article is part of NASA Knows grades 5 to 8 series. Earth is our home planet. Scientists believe Earth and its moon formed around the same time as the rest of the solar system. Okay. There we go, some more important. Why does Earth look like? What does Earth look like? Not why, but what. From space, Earth looks like a blue marble with white swirls and areas of brown, yellow, green and white. The blue is water, which covers about 71% of the Earth's surface. The whites are clouds. And the rest is land. The equator is an imaginary circle that divides Earth into two halves. The northern half is called the northern hemisphere and the southern half is called the southern hemisphere. Blah, 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 blah. How do we know the Earth is round? Humans have known the Earth is round for more than 2,000 years. The ancient Greeks measured shadows during summer solstice and also calculated Earth's circumference. They used positions of the stars and constellations to estimate distances on Earth. They could even see the planet's round shadow on the moon during a lunar eclipse. We can still see this during lunar eclipses. Today, scientists use geodesy, which is the science of measuring the Earth's shape, gravity and rotation. Geodesy provides accurate measurements that show Earth is round. With GPS and other satellite scientists can measure Earth's size and shape to within a centimetre. That's a lot less. The American governments have like millimetre point precision when it comes to GPS. Even when GPS was first started, it was centimetres. Pictures, and that was in the 80s. Pictures from space also shows Earth is round like the moon. Even though our planet is a sphere, it's not a perfect sphere because the force caused when the Earth rotates, the north and south poles are slightly flat. Earth's rotation, wobbly motion, and other forces are making the planet change shape very slowly, but it's still round. So this is what I was talking about in terms of the axis. So it's tilted slightly, and even though it's tilted, that tilt doesn't change as it's going around the sun, so that's why we get the seasons. But this also, on its axis, kind of wobbles and and moves around in different ways. And it becomes unbelievably complex to a point where you are doing it at university and degree level, where you have to work out the calculations, etc., etc. So, modern flat Earth beliefs are based on, what do we think, just one person, and then reinforced by another Samuel. Coincidence? I think not. And is more than likely based on interpretations of the Bible. Let's put it like that. Despite there being a lot of evidence to the contrary, they still believe in it. And that brings us on, and we're going to briefly touch on this, denialism. So, in the psychology of human behaviour, denialism is a person's choice to deny reality as a way to avoid a psychological, uncomfortable truth. Denialism is essentially a rational action that withholds validation of historic experience or an event when a person refuses to accept an empirical, verifiable reality. Now, obviously, we should be questioning where the research comes from and doing our own research. But that's harder for some people than others. Other people can go and search what is going on outside. I think the FBI are here. I hope you can't hear that. So, I think it's someone playing football. With a flat ball? Maybe. Let's wrap it up then, seeing as we're going to get disrupted by that. There are lots of different variations of denialism, but basically they're using cognitive dissonance, usually, by accepting some things and not accepting other things. So they might look at something from a scientific point of view when it suits them, but not other times. And with most of the conspiracy theories that we're going to talk about, that isn't a problem, because often it is about less about denial and more about whether or not what's been said is the truth. And obviously, flat earthers will say, well, NASA's lying. But the problem with something as large as a flat earth conspiracy is there are so many people who would have to be on board with this. So many countries would have to be on board with this, which is very interesting as well. The political nature of denying us, if the Western world was to say that it's a sphere, you'd probably expect Russia or China or another set of group of people would come out and say, no, it's flat, look at this, and try and prove that it was flat, if it was. And that's, you know. So, there's lots of different variations. Obviously, we're not going to go into denialism full-fold, but what I found really interesting was that there's an entire essay on Wikipedia about why Wikipedia cannot claim the Earth is not flat. So it is unlikely that it will ever happen upon an editor who will argue that Wikipedia cannot claim the Earth cannot be flat, but you may indeed encounter someone who will strenuously maintain that a particular breakthrough or a notable or controversial idea, belief or theory deserves more consideration than it has received in the academic world. Using the flat Earth example below as a metaphor, this essay examines 10 types of arguments commonly used by advocates of fringe concepts and advise the neutrality-minded editor or administrator on how to diffuse them. So this is really interesting for us as we go through the different conspiracies. Going through these might be a good idea. So let's go through types of arguments. Personalization. You're biased against the Earth being flat is too strong to be objective. So these are common ones. So personalization is easily the most common form of attack on neutrally minded editors. Personalization is ignoring the basis for inclusion altogether and making the argument personal. For example, they argue that the editor is biased towards the mainstream. So saying that you're not listening to me, you wouldn't listen to my group of people. You wouldn't listen to the flat earthers, even if we were saying the truth. Sourcing. Actual Essex, that's crazy. So obviously sources, where they come from and why they are important. Sources must be reliable, independent and current. Reliable, that's really hard to, that's going to be different on different sides. Independent, again, everybody's being funded by something. And current, I agree I'm a bit on the fence with that, because in the academic world, often you'll find that, if it's not newer than 5 years, then it doesn't matter in some circles. When really, we can be looking at older data and it'll be fine. So, self-published sources, I love them. Balance. Okay, so you can't just argue that we're flat. You have to say, this is what people believe and this is why they're wrong. A conspiracy. So this is the best one. The flat Earth theory has been marginalised by scientific establishment in order to protect its interests. The next tactic is to appeal to your ideas about free speech and distrust of censorship and the establishment. All theories are not generally accepted, are part of a theory devoted to explain why this is. Not always, but sometimes. Reversed burden of proof. That's always an awkward one, isn't it? You can't not prove. Gaming. Earth is round, reliable sources in scientific literature statement. If X is round, X is not flat. I see. So they're just trying to... Okay. Amenability. The flat Earth theory is not only amenable to science approaches and methods. Okay, so you can't... There's no way to scientifically prove it. And controversy, the flat Earth theory is clearly controversial, therefore it's, not going to be talked about in the same way as other things. But some of the theory is true. That's one that will come up a lot on Conspiracy 101. The filtering out what is true and what is not true is very hard sometimes. And looking back at MK Ultra, which we did last episode, who would have thought the majority of that was true if you were just reading it as a conspiracy theory without knowing the history behind it? Crazy. Anyway, so that was a weird article that I saw, and I thought it was odd that they use Flat Earth as an example of that. I guess because it is, again, a conspiracy that's coming up a lot in the news, so it's obviously pertinent, but also it's one that most people would just flatly refuse. Unlike other conspiracy theories, which we'll go through, where you might go, yeah, I guess that could, yeah, I guess, yeah. So, what else have we got to look at? There was this Daily Beast article, which I was going to look at, but basically it's the Cambridge dude, which is really embarrassing, and how Flat Earth began because of that. Yeah, Cambridgeshire, England. Ooh. And then to end on this, we couldn't not look at someone's personal website, which I thought was really important, because when looking at, you know, things online, individuals' websites are really important to me, and I love this. So, current weather of a flat Earth. You can't understand the weather without knowing the true shape of the Earth. We've been silent for too long. Scroll down to learn the truth. So again, this is another projection of a spherical Earth. I don't know why they keep doing this. That's where the sun is now, apparently. So I don't know what that means. Don't be an April Fool. The weather proves the Earth is flat. Temperature proves the Earth is flat. The globe theory can't explain why the poles are colder than the equator. Axis. We talked about this, didn't we? The Earth gets its heat from the sun's rays, and on a globe, the sun should be the same size and brightness no matter where you are. Wouldn't that would be one of my first sort of talking points in terms of a flat Earth? Because if you've got the sun above it, it doesn't matter really where. You're going to be able to see the sun, aren't you? No matter where you are. In fact, areas near the poles get more daylight during the summer. Yes. So they should be hotter. No. Than the equator. According to conventional science. No, they shouldn't be hotter. Ice is highly reflective. And also the atmosphere is weird in the North and South Pole. Only the flat Earth can explain the cold poles. They're further away from the path of the sun as it flies a mere 3,000 miles above the surface of the Earth. Okay, I get that. Yeah, I get that. Wind patterns prove flat Earth. As the sun moves above the flat Earth, it heats and expands the air. This creates opposing swirling patterns on either side of the equator, much like the wake of a boat on a water. This causes storms to swirl counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere. It's not true. So-called scientists will try to convince you that it's really caused by the Coriolis effect on a round Earth, but do you really trust a force that you can't see or feel? Aren't they Bible literalists? Surely the whole what do I want to Google? Earth. So he's kind of half right. Yeah, so wind comes from the heating up of the atmosphere and then low and high pressure, basically. So it feels like I'm at school. Sun heats up the atmosphere. The atmosphere heats up, and when stuff gets hot, it rises, and that creates a small pocket of pressure difference, and that gets filled up with air from somewhere else, and that creates the wind. And you get these things called cells, which... Do I want to get into this? No, I don't. Let's just go back. I don't want to be explaining all of that. Where are we? Why? Who am I? Where am I? Okay, where are we? Yeah, so a Coriolis effect is basically the spinning of the Earth. It's very, very small. It's not like... It only impacts large bodies, and that's why hurricanes will have are impacted and yeah, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Okay, precipitation proves flat Earth. Notice how storms elongate and stretch out near the edges of the flat Earth. This is caused by giant ice wall that rings our world and separates us from the realm of the reptilian overlords beyond. A round Earth can't explain that. Okay, alright, I'm completely... Doesn't seem to work. I don't know what they're trying to do, but it doesn't seem to work. I think it might be broken. This is clearly... That's the truth. giant ice wall that rings our world and separates us from a realm of reptilian overlords beyond. I think we should end it on there. I think we have genuinely reached the limit of what can be learnt today. There are lots of ways to disprove flat Earth, but I don't think we should. Because, for the most part, we don't need to. What we should be doing is looking at why flat Earth exists. And for the most part, it does seem to hold its stead in Bible literalism. A couple of Samuels got together 100 years apart and decided to start a conspiracy theory, which is fair enough. Before we finish, this conspiracy was actually pretty fun to talk about, and one of which I have something to say on, at least from my past. So usually they're a little bit heavy. This one wasn't so heavy, but I always like to end on something a little bit light-hearted. And today we're going to be looking at a phenomena called a twin film. And this is something I think most people know about, but don't necessarily know that there's a name for it. So twin films are films with the same or very similar plot produced or released at the same time by two different film studios. So this has happened a lot, and I'm sure you can think of examples straight away. And we're gonna have a look at some examples in a minute, but let's just go through why this kind of happens. So the phenomena can result from two or more production companies investing in similar scripts around the same time, resulting in a race to distribute the films to audiences. Some attribute twin films to industrial espionage, which is very conspiracy, the movement of staff between studios, or the same screenplays are sent to several film studios before being accepted. Another possible explanation is the films deal with topical issues, such as volcanic eruptions, reality television, terrorist attacks, or significant anniversaries resulting in multiple discovery of the concept. So sometimes it might just be a coincidence in our cultural bias that we start writing scripts, start investing in producing movies that just happen to be the same. But some of them are so weird that, yeah. While twin films are usually big budget films, a mockbuster can be made with a low budget with similar titles or blockbuster films. So sometimes there are films that are made within a release window, or say if you know a film's going to come out next year, you have a few months to make something that's aping on it, either purposely trying to gain money from it, from all the people buying the DVDs who get confused. Mockbusters are usually given more limited release and marketing intended to take advantage of public interest in the topic driven by a major film. Producer Bingham Ray recalls a conversation where the screenwriter of the 2006 Truman Capote biopic Infamous phoned to announce that his script had been finished. Ray said, "I know, I've got it on my desk," before realising that he actually had the screenplay to Capote, a biopic by a different writer. Avoiding twin films, screenwriter Terry Riccio notes that there are always film projects with similar subjects being developed in multiple studios, and that usually only one of them makes it into production in a given period of time. Therefore, twin films are better regarded as exceptions to this tendency. For example, the release of the 2015 Whitey Bulger biopic Black Mass led to the abandonment of a planned film about Bulger that would have been produced by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. The 2008 film Why Do You Love, about an American record label, Chess Records, had its widespread release delayed until 2010 to avoid competing with Cadillac Records, a higher-budget 2008 film on the same subject. In one case, for the 1974 film The Towering Inferno, the fear of having competing action thrillers both set in burning skyscraper convinced two Hollywood studios to merge their productions into one all-star film. Clever. So, we've got quite a lot old films that were the same, but I don't remember any. Yeah, these aren't the ones I immediately think of. But they're very interesting in that they, Cannonball and Gumball Rally, that's really odd. I didn't realise they both came out in the same time. Godspell I've never heard of, but Jesus Christ Superstar and Godspell, both based on the life of Jesus Christ, coming out at the same time. Nosferatu, the Vampire, and Dracula, I feel like that's a bit, yeah. Amityville Horror and Shining. Okay, two. That's weird. Two Thingies of Carmen. Obviously, The Bond, Octopussy, and Never Say Never Again. Never Say Never Again was a weird one, so read up on that if you want to. The Day After and Threads. Again, nuclear war. That's kind of going to be in mindset, isn't it, in the mid-80s. The ones I remember... Where are you? Where are you? Are not early, but relatively late. So there's two, Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, them coming out at the same time, mid-90s, very popular arcade games. It's going to be a thing. Yeah, Showgirls and Striptease, that's a bit weird. Braveheart and Rob Roy, that's a bit weird. Dante's Peak and Volcano, very odd. Ants and Bug's Life, they're the really weird ones. There are not many computer animated films in this time, I think Bug's Life was the third one, or Ants was the third one, or fourth one. It's really not many, and they both are very similar. And then Deep Impact and Armageddon, very, very similar. But as you can see, there's a lot. Oh, Ed TV and The Truman Show, that was weird. That was weird. Dark City and The Matrix. I think Dark City influenced The Matrix a lot, so I don't know. That's a bit of a weird one. Shriek If You Know What I Did Last Friday the 13th. And Scary Movie. Mission to Mars and Red Planet. I remember those coming out at the same time. That was weird. Again, you get the idea. But yeah, that's an interesting tidbit. That's what I like these things at the end to be. But let's wrap this up. This has been a good one. This has been a good episode. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to join me live and watch me on Twitch on Saturdays, 7 o'clock GMT or British summertime, depending on which one it is. And yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to breathe.